I is an imaginary number. I equals the square root of -1. So we've gone beyond the real numbers to another set of numbers, something that will help us to explain what happens when you take the square root of a negative number. Note that this is only the square root, not the 4th root or the 6th root, just the square root. We might notice a pattern. I to the 0 is 1, I to the 1 is I squared is taking the square root of -1 and multiplying it to the square root of -1. And when you multiply a radical to itself, you just get the radicand. I cubed is I squared times I. And I to the 4th is multiplying I squared times I squared. So if I squared is -1 and I squared again is -1, when you multiply those two together, you get +1. I to the 5th is the same thing as I, because it's I to the 4th times I. So you notice here it went from 1 to I to -1 to -I to 1 to I. The next one would be -1 and -I. So it turns out that there are only 4 numbers in this pattern. So if we just look at these 4 different expressions of I, then we can try and figure out what happens anytime we have a higher power, like I to the 30. All we have to do is take that 30 and divide by 4, since there are only 4 possible answers in our pattern. How many times it goes in there doesn't matter. What matters is the remainder, because the remainder will indicate the exponent that you really have for I. And I squared is -1. So I to the 30 is -1. Let's try that again. I to the 21. Well, we take our 21 and we divide by 4, which would give us 5 with a remainder of 1. And that remainder is all that I need. So this is I to the 1 power, which is I. I to the 34. We take our 34 and we divide by 4. 4 goes in there 8 times with a remainder of 2. So this is essentially just asking us what is I squared, and again our I squared is -1. I to the 72nd. We take our 72, we divide by 4, and 4 goes into 72 exactly 18 times with no remainder. So I to the 0 power is simply 1. I to the -13th power. Well, if you notice, I started my list at 0 and I worked my way down. A negative exponent is a little hard to work with. So if we add any multiple of 4, like 16, then we'll have I to the 3rd power. And then we can look that one up in the chart, and that is -I. So anytime you have a negative exponent, just add enough 4s so that you're looking at a positive exponent, and then you can determine what's happening.